So welcome all. Thank you for coming. My name is Naomi Black, and I'm a member of the Accessibility Engineering Group here at Google. And today I'm very pleased to invite our speaker, Dr. Sylvia Pfeiffer. Sylvia is a member and an invited expert on the W3C HTML Accessibility Task Force, and she's also the author of the Definitive Guide to HTML5 Video. So Sylvia is here to talk to us. Come on up. Sylvia is here to talk to us today about WebVTT, which is one of the standards for time text, which is under consideration by the W3C. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to come and speak about this important topic today. We know there are a lot of discussions going on about formats for captions, and we want to standardize them for the web, but standardizing it for the web has a much larger impact these days than just on web browsers. Just on the web itself, it goes into many different devices, so we're very interested and very keen to give a broad coverage of available technology, and this is what we're trying to do here today. So I'll be talking about mostly about WebVTT, the file format, but I'll also be talking a little bit about how to plug that into the web browser, into HTML, so that in the future we have a very simple way of displaying captions in web browsers on videos without having to do much more than authoring a file and giving a link to the web browser of that, for that file. So it will be very simple for people in the future to create more captions. All right, let's dig right in. As we were looking at requirements of such a text format, a web text format for video, we looked at the different types of content that can be time-aligned with video. And captions and subtitles are the obvious ones, but text video descriptions are also an important use. These are for blind users and can be read out by screen readers in parallel to the playback of the video. This may well not be the most usable way of doing audio descriptions, but it is a much easier way to publish audio descriptions for blind users. And in fact, for a lot of blind users, it may well be all they need because they already have their screen reader set up, and it works really well for some people. Further to that, we are also talking about navigation or chapters, which is also very important for blind, and in fact any user. If you want to go through a video quickly and find out what's in there, you want to jump to what we now know as chapter markers. We can call them navigation markers. This can be also covered with the same kind of format. And more generally, metadata. This is something that archives are particularly interested in, to attach metadata to sections in the video. Can also be done with such a time-aligned text format. So what we have discussed for browsers is a very simple format. It's called WebVTT, Video Text Tracks. WebVTT, this is one of the very simple files that we can think about, just a marker at the beginning of the file that identifies the file format. The captions or subtitles, let's call them cues, then have an individual identifier. In this case, it's the number 1 and number 2. Could be any string, however. And then we've got start times and end times on each one of these cues and a piece of text in there. It turns out then, as we all know, how captions are displayed on screen in something like this, if it's automatically created by the browser. That was the very simplest way of doing subtitles. Now we want to do more than just the simple captions. In particular, if we want to achieve all the functionality of, for example, the CEA 608 captions, then we need to do a bit more than just text. We also want to have some formatting in there. Here is an example on how to do bold. I'll point to it. There's a bold tag in here, so that will be bold text. Here is some italic text. And up here, we've got a general way to associate style or a class to a piece of text and give it a meaning. In this situation, we've turned a piece of text into red text and capitalized it. Of course, if we're using this format also for subtitles. We need to be careful to cover internationalization issues. WebVTT is very clear here. It requires UTF-8 character encoding. It has a Ruby tag, which supports Asian languages in particular. It also does vertical and horizontal rendering of text. Again, possibly one of the most important ones are Asian languages, and I think there are a few other languages that are also rendered vertically. And we need to make sure we get the alignment right. Sometimes text is read from the right to the left, so therefore it needs to be aligned on the right rather than on the left. Now, positioning is another requirement. Again, something that traditional captions, TV captions, are able to do. It's possible to position cues anywhere in WebVTT. There are basically 3 important ways to position text. There are line positions, so there's the concept of display lines exists in WebVTT. So the line position allows people to directly address a specific line. It's also, it can be done with a line number or a percentage. Then we have the text position. This means we're placing the text either on the left, in the middle, or on the right. No, hold on, that's the alignment, sorry. Alignment is left, middle, and right, and the text position is, so when we have text like this, it's in the middle and it's centered. So we can also do a centering, and we can do a left alignment and a right alignment, but we can also move that whole text elsewhere. So the text position is where we move the text, and the alignment is where we align it at. Sorry for the confusion. We also have speaker semantics included into WebVTT, which is interesting because it allows us to put some semantic information into our markup. Here, for example, we have 2 people speaking. We know their position on the left and on the right, and the speaker markup can tell us where we want to position it, and can also, for example, help us always use the same styling for the same speaker. So, for example, we want to use the same font color, maybe a specific outline or something for a speaker. We can define that and then apply that always for that speaker. Now, so much for captions. Now we move on to a little example on text descriptions. Here is one that I've used previously, and we've got that as an example on the side. I'm not going to go there. I just want to mention it because we want to focus on captions today. But what happens here is we've got text that's aligned with start and end time as well. And for a typical word rate of a screen reader, it will fit into that space, and it will be read back by the screen reader during that time. And here is the navigation example. As I mentioned, WebVTT can also be used for navigation. Here we have 3 chapters, and we can directly jump from chapter to chapter. There needs to be extra controls on videos to support this, but this is something we're working towards. Now, of course, as I'm saying, controls and input into web pages and automatic rendering, we need to know how we're going to do that. And there is markup in HTML5 for associating captions and formats like this with videos. In this example, I've got all of the VTT files that we've used before. I've included them here. And what we're using for it is called a track element. And this track element is included underneath the video element in the HTML5 markup. It links to the VTT file, and there is some description possible for the type of file it is. So we have a label. In this case, it's an English caption. We have a kind. which gives us a means to group all the tracks of the same type together. And we identify the language, because of course when we have user settings in browsers, we want to automatically make certain tracks available to the user. If the user has, for example, said that they always want captions or they always want subtitles in their language being shown, so the browser can look through this markup and identify which ones it has to turn on by default. Now in this case I've used only WebVTT files. The track layout, the way that we've defined track in HTML5 is actually generic. It can be used for other types of files as well, TTML or SRT or any other formats that will be implemented. But the generic way that track works is in this way. Now, once we've got it in the browser, we can actually support more than what is directly possible as markup in the WebVTT file, because now we've got the text in the browser and we can make use of all the functionality of the browser, which has styling and the concurrent style sheet functionality available to it. So this kind of styling is also available if used in a browser to these queues. And the way in which this is being done is that there's a pseudo element in CSS called : queue, and with that pseudo element you can address, for example, classes in the queue markup, and you can override the formatting that by default would be given. You can, for example, well, in this case it's been turned red, uppercase, a different font family, and a lighter weight. Now we've spoken a lot, we want to see a little bit of a demo here, and I've made a little bit of a demo which shows that we can do more than what's typically being used for captions right now. Most captions that are being used are pop-on captions, which are captions that don't overlap in time. There's one piece of caption shown, one queue shown, it disappears and the next queue is brought up. That's pop-on, and that is the default way of rendering it. But we may have a very different style of providing captions as well, which is traditionally been used mostly in live captioning. It's called roll up. So the queues will actually be added at the bottom and roll up as and the old ones will disappear. So I've made a little example that shows how that can be done as well. Let's hope this works.
I heard about this Arduino project and I saw it online and I said, wow, a lot of people are starting to talk about this. I should check it out.
Because we wanted to make a tool for our student that was more modern than what was available on the market at the moment.
For me, it was a case that this is a tool that I could see using myself, and therefore I could believe in actually helping to get it out to a wider world.
El hardware abierto significa volver a tener la posibilidad de mirar qué hay dentro de las cosas.
So you could see that the captions were being pushed up as they were being displayed. This is a very simple way of doing this kind of roll up. So as we're moving on, the next caption gets added to the bottom. This can be improved. This is just a very crude demo, but this can be improved with a bit more CSS in the browser. We can, for example, transition the text more slowly, and then it would be more readable rather than it jumping there directly. There's a whole swag of CSS functionality available to us in the browser to make this look very nice. And the functionality is there and possible to be used. I've mentioned paint on and roll up captions. I've mentioned pop on and roll up captions. I want to briefly also mention paint on captions, even though that's a bit more of an exotic use case, but it's possible to be used in CEA 608 captions, so we need to make sure that it's also possible to be represented in WebVTT. And what we've introduced for this kind of application is Q timestamps. These Q timestamps are basically just a timestamp that is being included into the text and says when the text that comes afterwards will be activated. Here I've done it, pardon me, at the word level. I've put Q timestamps in for every word, so every word would come up one after the other on the screen. However, the resolution is arbitrary. We could do that on every character if necessary. Interestingly enough, that can also be used for styling through CSS. There are the past and future pseudo-selectors, and these selectors allow us, for example, to do something like paint the old text in yellow, the new text in white, with a text shadow, and as it goes over, everything goes yellow. And we know this kind of application, obviously, from karaoke, which bridges into these applications as well, into more modern time-aligned text applications. We can cover all of these use cases with the same approach. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. We regard WebVTT as a bridge between broadcast and the web of the future. We can support all of the CE8 608 captions, all of the features, possibly also some of the 708 features. I think most of them, I haven't analyzed in detail, but most of the 708 features will be supported as well. It's a simplicity of editing which we like about the WebVTT format. It's readable, you can read it here on screen. There's not too much busyness as you're looking at it. And that means also that it's easy to edit and to create. We have the ability to apply web styling through the mechanism, the track mechanism that has been included into HTML5. And this is an open and freely available format. If you're looking for references, I've put the references on this last slide to all the specs. They're available for free. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Sylvia. We have a mic up. If people want to ask any questions, maybe you could introduce yourself briefly. We're recording this, and we're going to be posting it to YouTube. So hopefully you won't be shy. But please, if you have any questions for Sylvia about WebVTT, please step up to the mic.
I was going very quickly, so if somebody wants to go back and explore any of the features in more detail, this is probably the opportunity.
Hi, I'm Daniel Steinberg at Google. A couple questions. When you had the line number specification, how does that apply when you have vertical text?
Let me just find that. Here, this one?
Yeah.
So the line numbers are basically done for horizontal text, obviously from the top to the bottom, and for vertical text, they are turned around. So they apply in the same way.
Okay, and you have a lot of the underpinnings for interactive tags, but not the actual, I didn't see anything actually there, so the ability to say this particular tag is live and clicking on it might give a link or something like that if you considered interactivity.
Interactivity, you particularly talking about hyperlinks in this case?
In this case, yes.
Yes. So hyperlinks is something of a bit of a controversial issue. We've discussed this. It is obviously something that can easily be added. We've got the markup in HTML5. We could easily put a tag in there and a hyperlink. It's not something that's currently part of the specification, simply because people don't believe that it's a very good experience. When you're watching captions, they stay on the screen only for a very short amount of time. By the time you've decided that you want to follow a link, it's already gone. That's the reason. So I'm obviously not fully subscribed to that reason. I would actually like to have hyperlinks in it as well. What I look at in this format is that it's easy to extend it. And if somebody was to support it, then it is not a problem to put that in as well.
Yeah, something to consider with the hyperlinks is that because you have the ability to author different kinds of files, you could have a description that had a longer time and had a longer duration. It wouldn't have to disappear when a caption line disappeared.
In fact, I should actually add something. We've got, as I mentioned, we've got kinds of text that we're expecting in a WebVTT file. I've talked about captions and subtitles, I've talked about text descriptions, and I've talked about navigation. I've only mentioned metadata, but metadata actually solves that problem. Metadata means that you're allowed to put anything into a queue. Any markup you want, any non-markup you want, any text, anything at all. It just means that the browser can't do anything with it. It decides, it sees that it's of the kind metadata and goes, I'm being hands-off. I'm just going to hand it on to the JavaScript, and the JavaScript can do with it whatever it likes. So this would be one way to have interactivity in it. You could just grab it through JavaScript and then put it into a div on your page, and then there would be a hyperlink. And anything else that you can come up with that's time-aligned would work in this similar way as well.
And one last question. You showed the different formats, captions and descriptions and whatnot, as essentially the same VTT format, distinguished only by the track tag.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's enough semantic difference that you'd want to be able to distinguish it in another way. Like, for instance, could you build a file that had captions and descriptions in it, and or might you want to have some identifier in the file say this is a description file rather than count on the track tag?
Mixing content in one track is of course possible. Like you could put, you could concatenate, for example, a caption file with a audio description file. Then you would basically have two tracks available through one file. It's not a very easy way to deal with, and it would require a lot of additional implementation. So, for example, if that concatenated case was to be handled, the browsers would need to find out where the second file starts and so on. We actually like to keep the semantics separate, and HTML markup is built on keeping semantics separate. So this is why we introduced the kind attribute, and so therefore in one file you will only find captions of one type. Thank you.
Hi, Sylvia. John Folio from Stanford University. When you gave the code example of the CSS, it's not clear where the CSS actually lives. Is it embedded in the WebVTT file? Can you have an external file and link it? Can you just maybe get into that a little bit further?
Let me just find it. Sorry. So I've deliberately just put that there as a snippet because it actually doesn't matter where it lives. At the moment, because we're doing the CSS through the HTML page that includes this file up there, that HTML page could either have this CSS piece directly in the HTML page and address it, so an in-band CSS, or it could be in an external CSS file and be pulled into the HTML page together with the WebVTT file.
So it always sits outside of the VTT
It can
file.
sit, yeah. Well, so we're currently under discussion whether this is a functionality that we'd want to add to WebVTT as well. So whether you want a WebVTT file that links to a style sheet. We're careful about that because this comes from a very web point of view. We don't really want to pollute the WebVTT file with this web functionality because there are applications outside the web browser that do not want to have to implement, for example, all of CSS style sheets in order to display captions properly. So it probably makes more sense to have this as a separate file. And if people do want to have this additional functionality, they can use the WebVTT file and the CSS file together and parse them and use them in their style sheet engine to come up with a proper display.
I have a practical example of why you would want the CSS. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a practical example of why you would want the CSS to be outside the VTT. I work currently with people who are producing caption files for the UK market and who are then redistributing that same video here in the US, and they have to basically redo the entire caption file because UK audiences are expecting, for instance, to see a particular speaker marked up in a particular color. Here in the US, we're not expecting that. So you could imagine if you had one format where you marked up the content semantically, that depending on whether you showed it in a player here for the US or there for the UK, with the same caption file, you could display it differently according to different users' regional preferences.
I would also add that user style sheets, the user could actually increase the font size to their specific requirements.
Yes.
A second really minor question on the alignment, you said that could be left, right, or was it middle or center? Can you actually have it justified as well?
No, I don't think we have a means to justify the text. But I also think that actually, so from all the quality captions literature that I've read, how to do quality captions, I think justification has never been proposed as a readable way of doing it, because it changes the spacing between characters, and so therefore makes the text actually harder to read. So
I agree.
I don't think we actually need that feature, but
No,
it is a good point. Yeah.
Okay, well, it just wasn't specifically declared one way or the other. I agree with you.
Yeah, okay, fine, excellent. Have we got any more questions? Well, thank you very much. I suppose if anyone has any more questions, we're always here to answer more questions. There's the accessibility group at Google through which Naomi can be reached. And I'm very active at the W3C. Feedback can be sent also to the WHAT working group. There's plenty of ways to get to us. I should have probably put a contact slide in there as well. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook and so on, but just Google my name, Sylvia Pfeiffer, you'll find me. Thank you very much.